All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Justin Gutschmidt. I'm the head of national sales for Premion. It's nice to be here in person. Keith and I were talking yesterday, and just the ability to be back, the ability to ride on planes without masks is really awesome. So it's great to be here with Keith.
Yeah, I flew for. Is this on? Yeah, I flew for personal stuff last week, and when I went to the airport, it was kind of like, what just happened for the last 2 years? It was very odd. It's also weird to have such bright lights
This
after
is
2 years.
quite the venue.
Yeah,
I've been to a few of these events, but I've never had the spotlights on us like this.
right.
It's all right. We'll do our best to live up to the stage. But it's great again. Great to be with everyone. Premion, for those that don't know, hopefully a lot of you do, is the leading CTV ad network. We join a lot of these events just to work with brands and listen to some of the things that are going on in different categories because it's been a wild ride over the last few years, and our business has had a lot of growth and acceleration as CTV has exploded and how we help brands reach that streaming audience. So again, I'm looking forward to asking Keith some hard hitting questions today and see what he has to say about some great topics. So, Keith, you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So the first question we had a prep chat yesterday, and it was a great way to learn a little bit more about the focus and the mantra and the mission and I kept saying mission. He kept telling me no, it's not mission at Best Buy. It is the purpose. It is the purpose. And so let's start with the purpose at Best Buy and really how that plays a role in the context of you and what you focus on in your teams.
Well, yeah. So I'm at Best Buy. I've been there for 18 years, and we've gone through a lot of change, both as as a company, and as technology has changed. And of course, a lot of the technology we sell at Best Buy is part of the media ecosystem in some way because it changes how customers consume content. It changes how content is distributed. It changes ad models as things follow along, and so we're really in a way part of the media ecosystem. So it's been a natural progression to where we are today. The team that I'm responsible for leading includes all of our media buying. So, but also we have an ad business, Best Buy Ads, and CRM, and all of those things have changed a lot over the last 18 years that I've had. And I'll highlight a couple of inflection points you may have heard of. The first one, you remember the term showrooming? Well, we were the poster child for showrooming, and maybe for good reason. But what it really led to, kind of like the Japanese automakers waking up the U.S. automakers, it was really a wake-up call for traditional retail, especially big box retail with national footprints, with national media needs and strategies and that kind of thing. And so it was a wake-up call from an e-commerce standpoint and so on. But our epitaph may have been premature, and we survived it, but we had to wake up and get better at a lot of things. So that was one inflection point. The other one, of course, is the pandemic, which I don't want to overplay because we'd like to put it all in our
We're done with
rearview
that.
mirror at this
We're
point.
over it.
But it had a special impact on technology, which ultimately cascades to all of our jobs in this room, and that is because during the pandemic, people's technology needs accelerated and expanded. And so that goes for, and we had to serve customers that way. And our purpose, to get back to your question, is to enrich lives through technology. Well, that purpose became amplified during the pandemic because we had to change very quickly and make sure that we could serve customers with new value propositions. We had to accelerate pilots that were going on maybe in just a couple hundred stores to a national footprint, 1,000 stores, and of course then we had to market those things. So during a pandemic when people were behaving quite differently. So that's kind of to punctuate the role of our purpose in our lives and how it cascaded into my job and my team's jobs. Hopefully that helped.
Not an easy job, and a lot of different challenges throughout that time. As you mentioned, it accelerated a lot of different behaviors. The buying and the consumer behavior changed during that time. And we spoke yesterday about the customer journey, right? Which is really unique at Best Buy. Tell me a little bit more about that journey and really, how does that change your overall media mix to reach those consumers?
Yeah, this is one of those stories where your biggest curse is also your biggest superpower. Well, if you compare technology and why people come to Best Buy, whether it's in our store, online, whether it's inviting us into your house to help make sure that you have the right major appliances and are ready to do a home remodel or something like that. It's different than packaged goods, and I used to be a brand manager, so I don't want to say anything condescending or disparaging about brand management or CPG. What they're blessed with in that world is high frequency, high velocity, those kinds of things. And so very high transactional volume. It's the opposite for Best Buy and for technology when you think about your own behavior, and if you extrapolate that into what Best Buy employees have to do to serve customers, there's a lot lower frequency. The sales velocity, the transactional volume, all of that is much lower in technology than it is for packaged goods or food, drug, and mass, and those kinds of retailers. What we are blessed with is a special kind of customer with a special kind of journey, and that's with all due respect to all the other product categories and verticals like travel or auto or whatever. What we need to make sure that we do is understand the customer journey and have very high audience first-party data fidelity so that we can reach those audiences, with the proverbial right time, right place, right message kind of thing. But it starts way earlier in the consideration set, and it follows way past the purchase because technology has such a long purchase journey. So, if you think of a customer spends a millisecond thinking about what mayonnaise to buy, they'll think for a month about what laundry pair to buy, unless it's under duress, and then it's an extremely, anxiety-inducing experience. So we have to be ready whether the customer is thinking about a remodel and wanting to buy a new fridge for a $50,000 kitchen redo or a duress purchase for a major appliance. And that customer journey is just unique, and it is. And so we have to make sure that our marketing reaches those customers in the right way. So,
And you also
click deeper
mentioned
into
that
that.
it's not just the journey; it's then the overlapping intersection of how they purchase, both purchasing in store as well as online, and the complexity involved in that process that is not so so unique on one side.
That's true. And really, our CEO says it best, and she has Corey Berry on multiple earnings calls if you ever dial into those. Sometimes, as in every earnings call, some analyst will ask, well, what percent of your sales are driven by e-commerce? And she very politely redirects the question and challenges the premise because we try to serve customers from an omni-channel standpoint. So whether the sale was online or in a home or in the store, often, in fact, in more than 50% of the cases for some product categories, the consumer picks up the package at curbside or in store, even though the sale was through e-commerce. So it's not an easy question to answer. And so it would be inaccurate to suggest that there's some sort of attribution that is so defined about whether it was a home, store, app, e-commerce sale.
There's a lot of ways to buy today.
Right. So we're all used to thinking of attribution from a channel standpoint. I mean, certainly whether you're looking at analytical data and multivariate data or Adobe last click data, we tend to think of attribution being from a marketing channel. Well, for retailers like Best Buy, you have to think of it also from a channel standpoint, which makes it very complicated.
So one of the other things that we spoke about, and this just really stood with me because it was so impactful in the way that you look at your customers, not just becoming aware, but truly like customer obsessed. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that and the strategy that goes behind being like truly, customer obsessed in your approach.
Well, you could pick any one of my team's roles, whether it's buying, media strategy planning and buying, or running an ad business, or running CRM. It is unique because we do have not just e-commerce and an app and stores, but we also have a very strong home strategy. So we'll go into people's homes and for free, and I'm not trying to turn this into a sales pitch, but and advise people on what they could do in their homes. And we also now have a virtual store, so you can have sort of the best of both worlds, and that's starting to gain traction. We just introduced Total Tech, which in addition to My Best Buy, which is our free membership program, which is massive, tens of millions of active customers, we also just introduced a paid program, Total Tech, which for many customers pays for itself in the first transaction if you're buying, say, a laundry pair. Well, all of those value propositions are examples of how, in addition to the things that are sort of table stakes, same-day delivery, curbside, in-store, those kinds of things. As marketers, your version of that is probably symmetrical to ours, where the marketing job has gotten so much more complicated. And so there are times where it has to be hyper-personalized, let's say a push notification, all the way into running a campaign about new technology that you might want to consider. At least that's sort of our lives in terms of how to serve customers and be customer-centric.
Yeah. Well, it's a complicated mix today, and I think everyone's still trying to figure it out, right? No one's cracked the code on it, but there's a lot of good things that you're doing that I think have really showcased what you've done to find that customer along that journey. So let's talk a little bit about the technology that has absolutely exploded over the last couple of years. You've obviously sold a lot of that technology, and CTVs have absolutely become mainstream in the industry. That streaming has become so predominant in homes, and obviously as technology continues to evolve and how we find new ways to purchase, how we find new ways to interact with all these brands, it's just changing exactly what we're all focused on. So what's the next big thing for Best Buy? What are you focused on? What are you looking at? What are you piloting in the next few years?
I mean, that's a great question. I brought up I don't know if it would be, I find it interesting that we're part of the media ecosystem, so anyone who wanted to nerd bomb that one with me, after this sometime, I'd be happy to, but there's more to it than just like selling Roku sticks and smart TVs and Apple products and things like that. There's health. That's come up in a number of retailers' strategic ambitions, from Walmart to Best Buy. And we're in a special place because many people shop at Best Buy for things related to their home network. And whether it's a laptop that you're now going to use for virtual care, or for your kid who's in college, who needs, to tap into a doctor's appointment every now and then without having to drive somewhere, or whether it's a health device that used to be available only in your hospital because it costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Well, those devices are being developed by the world of technology, whether it's giant publicly traded companies or startups. And so they often want to distribute through Best Buy. And that's just one example. Electronic vehicles, fitness equipment. We're close to Peloton here. So those kinds of things are increasingly things that are technology that in the past wouldn't have been considered endemic, if you will, to what Best Buy sells. But if you think in terms of the expanding relevance of technology in our lives, along with the expanding accessibility of technology in areas that used to not be accessible to all of us as consumers, it's really an exciting and dynamic place. Kind of hard for us to have a conversation about what's endemic to our brand. Whether it's from a marketing standpoint and merchandising and assortment standpoint, or whether it's about Best Buy ads and running ads on our website. There are certain things you wouldn't expect to see, on our owned and operated channels from a advertising standpoint. But what you would expect and actually would find relevant is expanding. And so it's almost hard for us to keep up with it.
Well, you talk about so many different areas of the business, and as they continue to expand and you test, what are you really what are the key priorities in 2022 that really are your guiding light?
Well, I have to say health. I mean, that's if you want to click into enriching lives through technology, there are some things that are going to always be on, and we have to make sure that we're there to serve customers. Like, I mean, a good example in my lifetime at Best Buy, as well as Megan on my team, we were at Best Buy when the Hdtv Revolution happened. You remember when the government required people to use boxes? It wasn't really a government requirement. You could go buy a box if you didn't have a smart TV, and and go to high def instead of standard def, and those kinds of things. Well, we're part of that, but those are always on. Health, fitness, transportation, content, those are areas where we have to make sure that we and our suppliers keep up with both the technology advancements as well as customer expectations for what they would want to have to meet their technology needs.
A lot of good priorities. And listen, I would be remiss if I didn't ask your quick take on Elon Musk. I mean, what's the future of Twitter going to look like?
Boy, I mean, penny for your thoughts kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not sure my opinion matters much, but I think it will be interesting, more interesting from a political. I mean, I think I'm stating the obvious for all of us, but I'm happy to debate it over coffee. But I think it's going to be more interesting from a social, civics, and political, maybe anthropological standpoint in the future when someone's looking back on its significance. I think it'll have more weight there and significance to us than, let's say, from a media, supply and demand and audience standpoint. But I could be wrong, obviously.
We will see. We will see. Okay, so I mean, the summer's going to be here before you know it. I know it's still kind of gray out, but everyone wants it here. What are the things you're most excited about this summer?
Oh, things like this.
More
That
events.
was unrehearsed.
that,
It's
Bryan
just so
Innovators?
delightful to get back out in public and feel normal. It's just surreal.
Yeah.
It's fun to travel, get back. It'll be nice to be able to travel without travel internationally without all the other requirements. I think will be really nice.
So the other big headline is Netflix may be launching an ad-supported tier, right? So I'll ask a quick streaming question from the CTV guy here. What are you streaming? What are you watching on TV?
Oh, that's really boring. I'm going to dodge that.
I just heard some guys in the back talking about Winning Time.
I'm a
I'm a
documentary
big
guy,
Winning
so-
Time guy, so I'm gonna tell you to watch Winning Time. It's a good one.
Okay. Yeah, I get lots of advice on what to buy, and then I still go back to. I'll tell you, my favorite thing lately was the Beatles. Get Back. Yeah, it was just. Even though I'm sure some people would be like, it's still going, you know. I loved every second of it. That was my favorite thing I've watched lately.
Very cool.
And as far as like connected TV, I will say this: Best Buy. Many people are surprised to hear that our media mix is 80 to 85% digital, and it has been not just during, the growth of connected TV or during the pandemic. It's been that way for a good decade since I've been running that side of our business. The composition of that obviously is changing dramatically, and I would say things like connected TV and the explosion of content, and this relates to the Netflix point you just made. The composition of what we buy and the variety of ways in which we buy it, both of those things have changed dramatically in that decade where we've been, 80+% digital. And I would say, even though I've never really looked this up, I would not be surprised if we're actually buying more long-form content now that we're buying, a heck of a lot of connected TV, in addition to some linear, especially like live sports or things like that. But I would not be surprised if I looked back and we could somehow capture, some way of seeing that. I would not be surprised if we're increasing the amount of certainly audience-based, first-party data-based, sometimes programmatically, sometimes otherwise, long-form content over that decade. And we've tried to stay on the edge of that curve because then, price per unit is in our favor when we're early. But then the world catches up, and then demand catches up with supply, and prices go up. So you kind of we're all kind of chasing the efficiency curve in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we saved some time for questions intentionally because I think there's probably a lot of people in the room that want to ask you a few things. So let's open it up.
Hold on a second. Does anybody have questions? Which while I get this mic on, this is the COVID-free mic,
there.
so don't worry about it. Passing it around. Yeah, there's a lot of stairs. That joke's also not going to get old. I know. It's on. I'm not sure.
Hello. So thanks for that. That was great. I was surprised to hear that in all of that whole conversation, Web3 and the metaverse wasn't mentioned once. Especially with the Facebook launching now, saying that they're going to launch a retail outlet, presumably to sell Oculuses. So as Best Buy goes, when you talked about the things, innovative things you're selling in the future, does that have any fit, or did you just not want to talk about it, or how does that look?
That's a great question, and I'm not trying to be all corporate and stuff. I think just we've generally succeeded by letting the analysts and the futurists think about those kinds of things, and when customers start demanding what might be an early stage product or service related to the metaverse, then we want to be there and work with the technology brands that are our partners, our vendors, if you will. But I read the same articles and got excited about it. It's hard to get excited, when that got overshadowed from a, let's say, a valuation standpoint by the macroeconomic conditions and things like that. And so those conditions, not to be like overly, not to overthink it, but our customers are not thinking about that, honestly. And if we got preoccupied with something that is probably very true, it's a matter of when, not if, and how it manifests itself will certainly be established with, we work with Google, we work with Facebook, we work with Amazon. They're our frenemies, in many cases. And so Microsoft. So I guess we would probably mess up our customer experience if we started to get too focused on the future before our customers care about it. Does that make sense?
Just can you elaborate a bit on like where brand and brand awareness and consideration plays into your overarching principles of like where you invest heavily? Is it a focus on CTV, or where's your sweet spot for that?
Great question. That is the CMO's ultimate thing to arbitrate. For Best Buy, we're about 60 years old as a retailer, and I don't know why. And I've been there for a good the last third of that almost. Our relationship with vendors is so upstream, and technology, especially when it comes to certain brands, is so loud and pervades media, pervades mind share of customers, that I think we have a unique advantage when it comes to technology, that the way we work with vendors is so deep, stuff that I obviously can't get into here, but whether it's on the merchandising front or the marketing front, it is so collaborative that when there's a product launch, they rely on an association with us as, in many cases, their main distributor, and we rely on so much collaboration with them from a branding standpoint, to connect it to your question, that we hope that it's intuitive, or that and I think that probably gets overshadowed in some of the things like top of mind awareness and stuff like that, but we don't really, for the major categories, we obviously have super high top of mind awareness. How that is established and maintained is the CMO challenge, and at Best Buy the collaboration between us and vendors is so deep, even for brands and technologies that most of us have never heard of. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of stipulating the challenge, so it's kind of a dodge. I didn't mean to do that, or go like mental.
Is there another question?
Hooked up.
Actually, we'll get something close.
Thank you, Keith. I have a question about long-form video. So you talked about wanting to dabble more in long-form video. Are you talking about being where long-form video exists, or actually creating it from a branded content point of view?
Well, my reference was more about the former, not the latter. That's not to preclude or suggest that we don't ever have conversations about content integration. These are things that the history repeats itself, hopefully in a better way. Earlier on, this conversation about branded content, whether it's for Cheerios or Marriott or or a retailer like Best Buy, I think there was a period. My personal point of view is that there was a period when branded content had nothing to do with what consumers wanted or how to connect with them. But I think we are at a stage now, and it was all about product placement or things like that. I think we've graduated from that era. What the new era looks like from the latter thing you were alluding to is certainly a much more interesting open door when you think about the ability to efficiently produce and distribute relevant content that's bespoke to like specialty X. I think that's interesting, but to answer your question, I was referring more to the fact that with first-party data and audience data and the ability in multiple ways to reach customers not on a program basis but on a programmatic basis, that's what we're doing a lot more of. Does that make sense?
Any other questions? I got a couple, but no. All right, good. So I loved a lot of what you were talking about. I wrote notes here. I'm not like actually doing Wordle. I took care of it this morning. Got it on the second try, by the way, people. I'm pretty impressed with myself, and I've had 2 kids, just for the record. So can you talk a little bit about, like, in terms of working with, he's looking at me like, who is this person? But I was a big fan of the Get Back documentary too. In terms of what you were talking about with some of the partnerships that you guys are having, can you talk a little bit about working with either, and if it's not specific to what you're focused on, it's totally fine. It's more of like I think what's interesting is in this whole space of retail media are all these things that you can go after. And I've talked to a bunch of folks about, agencies and partners just want our data. They don't want our inventory. Can you talk at all about some of those kind of conversations and sort of how you guys are thinking of them, how you're being approached? Because I'm finding a lot of friends of mine who are in this space who are saying, agencies just want our data. Like, they don't want our other things. And that could be a viable business model, but it's just it's sort of I guess, an inflection point, one of obviously many.
Okay, sorry. I think you're speaking more about retail media as a growing subsector. Some people predicted it's going to be a quarter of all digital sales, which would be roughly $100 billion of 400 in ad spend for the U.S. So we're a part of that, Best Buy Ads, along with a lot of our friends in the retail space. And your question is about agencies, how we navigate the idea that agencies really just want the data. They don't.
Yeah, just agencies, brands. How does that how are you guys managing it? Because everybody's doing it a little bit differently.
The interesting thing about this is, on one hand, you could answer with, people want a lot of things. We work with publishers that are also our affiliates. I run affiliates. We run rich relationships with publishers who serve as affiliates, and we also buy media from them. Obviously, they would love for us to just carry all their costs of capital and working capital and run fulfillment for them and pay them exorbitant affiliate fees that are higher than our OI rate. I mean, that's not going to happen, So people want a lot of things. So that's the smart ass answer. I think a more intellectually sound answer is that the media ecosystem, including the agencies, need retail media to be retail media, and provide an additional way, not a substituted way, but an additional way to access inventory using first-party audiences. And of course, obviously, when it comes to retail's owned and operated channels, well, we owe it to our shareholders and our customers to run those with a pretty, deliberatively, if you will. You layer on top of that the social and regulatory demands around privacy, and preserving the safety of retail media as a relatively safe, I would call it arguably the safest place right now. I mean, if you compare it to CTV, podcast, social for sure, social media, you think about retail media, we can't have a lot. We have to be extremely brand safe. And so whether it's customers' privacy or brand safety, I think retail media has to be allowed to thrive and improve. I mean, measurement, attribution, closed loop, all of those kinds of things. We have an advantage, but we also have to get ourselves organized so that there are some standards and there are some things that are table stakes that we all observe. But I know that's a wordy sort of like I'm trying to persuade you, but the idea.
I'm sold. Don't worry about it.
But if anybody in here thinks the agencies feel like that retailers should just sell their first-party data to either brands or to brands through their agencies, not only is it not going to happen, but they shouldn't want it to happen because it would kind of kill the golden goose.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer. I love the brand.
My point of view, but I'm obviously biased.
Yeah, you got them. You have one of the. There's only 3 mics here, and you have one of them, so you have a big voice, and you're on the slide too. So like you're easily over me. No, it's a great answer, and I love the fact that the retail media space is the safest of all environments because it's not. It's not, like you said, it's not social, it's not.
We don't have to arm wrestle, Justin. But I do think every media channel, every retailer, every retail media network, we all have our superpowers, and we all need to support each other in doing that.
Yeah.
I feel like the retail media, getting from 40 billion today, heavily dominated by Amazon, to 100 billion, it's funny. It's not that the rising tide is going to lift all boats. It's that more, bigger, better boats will lift the tide. Do you know what I mean? We've had an ad business for 12 years. It really started to blossom when others came in and competed, and ad tech caught up with us, and agencies started to pay attention. Brands started to want it. That's what's causing retail media to grow, is bigger, better ships.
All right. Anybody else, any other questions? Joshua? Oh, John has a question. Who's close? Is anybody close to John?
18 years at Best Buy?
Doesn't it show?
Actually, no. Technically, no. No, really doesn't.
John's 2 years out of college, just in case you were wondering.
Josh, my mother and I are so proud of you. So, the fact is, you have lasted in a job where the turnover typically is 2 to 3 years, not 18. So kudos to you. When you write the book.
Oh. That's too. I'm sort of turning red. No,
No, I'd love to know. 2 or 3 takeaways from that incredible run.
I'll try to steal from a conversation I had recently. I've got a hugely talented team. I mean, three of them sitting right down from you. What I think and how I would solve problems is increasingly irrelevant. And it's a little bit like the bigger, better boats will rise the tide. My career and Best Buy's success and our team's success is more of a function of bigger, better boats, not the first boat or the boat that kind of, you know what I mean? The tide's rising because of talent, on the team, and that kind of thing. I like the best answers, the highest fidelity solutions don't come from me. They come from the collaboration on the team. I don't know. I mean, it seems
Surround
like
yourself
we've
with
tried-
talented people. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, the clock struck 0, folks.
We're at 0.
We're
in
at
red.
0. We're a little over 0. We're a little minus 0. But this is awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry for the rough jump in.